The collar was burned almost beyond recognition, but the name hidden beneath it was something no Marine on that base was ready to see. Dawn arrives quietly over Camp Pendleton, California, carrying the familiar scent of salt from the Pacific Ocean and the sharp smell of cold metal from the training grounds. The base is already awake. Boots move across concrete. Engines hum in the distance. Flags move slowly beneath a pale morning sky. It is another ordinary day for the men and women who serve there. Until a white German shepherd walks out of the morning fog. He does not run. He does not bark. He simply stands at the edge of the main gate, watching the Marines as if he has traveled a very long way to find them. His coat, once bright like fresh snow, is covered with dust from the road. His ears are alert, but his body carries the quiet exhaustion of a soul that has been searching for something. Around his neck hangs an old K9 collar. The leather is faded. The metal buckle is darkened, and across the surface are strange burn marks that look like someone tried to erase a memory. Sergeant Marcus Hayes is the first Marine to step forward. At 34 years old, Marcus has spent most of his adult life wearing the uniform. Tall and steady, with deep brown skin and calm eyes shaped by years of discipline, he has learned how to remain composed even when the world feels uncertain. His fellow Marines know him as someone who never leaves a teammate behind, but they also know he carries a silence he rarely explains. Years earlier, Marcus lost someone important during a mission overseas. Since then, he has carried a question he never says out loud. Could he have done more? That question followed him home. It followed him through quiet nights and empty rooms. And now, standing in front of this strange white K9, Marcus feels something he cannot explain. The dog looks directly at him. Not like a stranger. Like someone familiar. Like someone remembered. Marcus lowers himself slowly and extends his hand. "Easy, buddy," he whispers. The German shepherd takes one careful step forward. Then another. The entire gate area becomes quiet. Marines who were walking past stop and watch. There is something about the moment that feels different. The dog does not seem afraid. He seems relieved. When Marcus touches the old collar, the K9 closes his eyes for just a second, as if the simple kindness of a human hand has brought back a memory buried deep inside him. Then Captain Daniel Whitmore approaches with a concerned expression. He has commanded Marines for years and has seen many unusual things, but this feels different. "Where did he come from?" he asks. No one knows. There is no owner nearby, no vehicle waiting, no explanation, only the dog and the damaged collar. Dr. Emily Carter from the base veterinary unit arrives minutes later. She carefully examines the K9, checking his condition and looking over the collar. The dog remains completely still, trusting her. That alone surprises everyone. Military K9’s are trained for loyalty and focus, but this animal carries something beyond training. He carries history. Emily turns the collar over in her hands. "There is something underneath this," she says softly. The Marines gather closer. Hidden beneath the burned leather is a small piece of metal, not much bigger than a quarter. A piece of an old identification tag. The markings are worn, but still visible. Emily wipes away the dirt with a cloth. Marcus watches her face change. The room becomes silent before anyone says a word. Because the name appearing beneath the damage is not just a name. It belongs to someone every Marine on the base remembers. A soldier who was believed to be gone. A K9 handler whose story ended years ago. Marcus looks back at the white German shepherd. The dog looks back at him. And in that quiet moment, everyone understands one thing. This was not a lost dog who accidentally found a military base. This was a forgotten chapter that had somehow walked back through the gate. The small piece of metal rested in Dr. Emily Carter's hand like a forgotten piece of a story that someone had tried to bury. Around her, the sounds of Camp Pendleton seemed to fade away. The engines, the footsteps, the distant voices of Marines moving through their morning routines all became a quiet background to one simple question. Who was this dog, and why had he returned carrying a name from the past? Marcus Hayes stood beside the examination table, his eyes fixed on the white German shepherd. The dog sat calmly, his paws resting on the cold floor, watching every movement around him. There was no panic in his eyes, no confusion, only patience, like he had been waiting for this moment longer than anyone could imagine. Emily carefully cleaned the remaining dirt from the small metal tag. The markings slowly became clearer. She looked up at Captain Daniel Whitmore before speaking. This belongs to Corporal Ryan Miller. The name settled over the room like a heavy silence. Marcus knew that name. Everyone in the K9 unit knew that name. Ryan Miller had been remembered as one of the most dedicated handlers to ever serve at the base. He was the kind of Marine who spoke softly to his K9 partner after long days in the field. The kind of person who believed that trust was earned, not commanded. And beside him had been Ghost. Before the white German shepherd became a mystery, he had been a partner, a protector, a member of a team. Marcus slowly looked at Ghost again. The dog lowered his head slightly when he heard Ryan's name. It was a small movement, almost invisible, but Marcus noticed. He knows, Marcus whispered. Emily looked at him. You think he remembers him? Marcus did not answer right away. He had seen many things during his years as a Marine. He had seen courage in impossible places. He had seen people hold on to hope when everything around them suggested they should let go. But seeing a dog react to a name that belonged to someone lost years ago felt different. It felt like a message arriving late. Ghost was moved to the veterinary building for a full evaluation. The room was warm, filled with soft lights and the quiet sounds of medical equipment. Unlike many unfamiliar animals, Ghost did not resist. He simply followed Marcus. Every few steps, he looked back to make sure the Marine was still there. Marcus noticed the habit. You do that a lot, don't you? He said softly, making sure someone stays. The dog looked at him with calm amber eyes. Marcus understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. After his own loss, overseas, he had spent years pretending that moving forward meant leaving memories behind. But maybe memories were not anchors. Maybe they were reminders of what mattered. Emily examined the collar more closely. The burn marks covered several areas, but underneath them were small details that had survived. A faded serial number, a partial mission code, a symbol from the old K9 division. She compared the information with archived records. The answer surprised her. Ghost was not just any retired military dog. He had been listed as missing after a classified field operation 5 years earlier. The file had been closed. The case had been considered finished. But Ghost was standing in front of them, alive, waiting. Marcus looked through the window toward the training fields outside. The morning sun had finally broken through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the base. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Curiosity. Not the kind that came from wanting answers alone. The kind that came from knowing there was someone or something still waiting to be understood. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat beside Ghost in the quiet corner of the K9 facility. The dog rested near his boots, the burned collar placed carefully on the table between them. You came all this way for a reason, Marcus said. I just need to figure out what it is. Ghost lifted his head. For a moment, the two of them simply looked at each other. A Marine carrying memories he never shared. A K9 carrying a story no one had heard. Neither of them knew it yet, but the damaged collar between them was not just a piece of the past. It was the beginning of a truth that had been waiting years to come home. The old records room at Camp Pendleton had not changed much over the years. The walls were lined with shelves filled with military files, faded photographs, and memories that belonged to people who had long since moved on. The room always carried a quiet feeling, as if every document inside was waiting for someone to open it at the right moment. That afternoon, Marcus Hayes stood beside Dr. Emily Carter as they searched through the history of one name. Ryan Miller, the name that had brought a forgotten K9 back into the light. Outside the window, the California sun stretched across the training fields, warming the rows of empty kennels and the paths where countless Marine and K9 teams had walked together. Inside, Marcus turned another page. The records showed Ryan as a dedicated handler, a Marine known for patience, discipline, and a rare ability to understand animals without needing many words. But the most important part of every report was not written in official language. It was hidden in the small notes, the personal observations, the moments between missions. One note mentioned how Ryan always carried an extra blanket for Ghost during cold nights. Another described how the white German shepherd would wait outside Ryan's office every morning before training began. Emily smiled slightly as she read the details. He was not just a handler, she said. He was family. Marcus looked toward the floor where Ghost was resting nearby. The dog was lying quietly, but his ears moved every time Ryan's name was spoken. He was listening, remembering. How does a dog remember someone after 5 years? Marcus asked. Emily looked down at the file. Maybe the same way people remember someone they love. The answer stayed with Marcus. He had spent years trying to understand memory. He thought memories were supposed to fade with time. But ghosts seemed to prove something different. Some connections did not disappear. They simply waited. The investigation into the collar continued. Emily carefully studied the damaged leather and metal pieces, searching for anything that could explain what happened. Beneath the burned surface, she found something unexpected. A tiny engraved symbol almost hidden by years of wear. It was not part of the official K9 identification. It was a personal mark, something Ryan had added himself. Marcus leaned closer. What does it mean? Emily traced the symbol gently with her finger. I do not know yet, but he wanted someone to find it. That sentence changed the feeling in the room. The collar was not just damaged equipment. It was a message that had survived when almost everything else was lost. Later that evening, Marcus took Ghost outside near the quiet edge of the base. The sky was turning orange above the Pacific, and the sound of the ocean carried through the evening air. Ghost walked beside him slowly, no leash pulling, no hesitation. Just two soldiers moving together through the fading light. Marcus stopped near an old memorial garden where several names were engraved in stone. He often came there when he needed silence. Ghost looked toward the names, then back at Marcus. You miss him too, don't you? Marcus said softly. The dog lowered himself beside him. For a moment, Marcus felt the weight he had carried for years become a little lighter. He realized something about Ghost. The dog was not searching for a replacement. He was searching for a promise that had never been completed. Back inside the K9 facility, Emily made another discovery. The damaged collar contained a hidden compartment, small enough that most people would never notice it. Inside was a piece of folded material protected by the metal casing. It was old, fragile, but still readable. She opened it carefully and froze. The message was only a few words, written in Ryan's handwriting. Marcus saw her expression change. What is it? Emily looked at Ghost through the window. Then she looked back at Marcus. I think this was meant for whoever found him. The room became quiet. After years of uncertainty, after years of unanswered questions, Ghost had finally brought back a piece of the truth. But the message inside that collar was not an ending. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Because hidden within those few words was a secret that could change everything they thought they knew about Ryan Miller and the last chapter of Ghost's journey. The folded piece of material rested under the soft light of the K9 facility, untouched for several minutes. No one in the room wanted to rush the moment. After years of questions, after years of silence, they finally held something that came directly from Ryan Miller. Marcus Hayes stood near the table, looking at the small message with a feeling he could not describe. It was not just information. It felt like a voice from the past reaching across time. Dr. Emily Carter carefully unfolded the fragile paper-like material. The handwriting was faint, but the words were clear enough to read. If you are seeing this, then Ghost found his way home. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He looked through the glass window, toward the white German shepherd resting outside. Ghost was lying near the door, calm and patient, as if he already knew what was being said. Emily continued reading. He was never just a K9. He was my partner. My family. Please remember that he always tried to come back. The room became completely quiet. Even Captain Daniel Whitmore, a man who had spent years making decisions with logic and discipline, lowered his eyes for a moment. There was something powerful about those words. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were simple. They carried the truth of a bond between two lives that had shared countless days together. Marcus stepped outside and sat beside Ghost. The evening air was cool, carrying the distant sound of waves from the Pacific coast. The lights around the base slowly came on one by one, creating a peaceful glow across the training grounds. Ghost moved closer and rested his head near Marcus's boots. You were trying to keep your promise, Marcus whispered. The dog closed his eyes. For the first time since arriving at the base, Ghost looked completely at peace. The next morning, Marcus began reviewing Ryan Miller's old mission records. Not because he wanted to reopen the past, but because Ghost deserved the truth. Every page revealed another piece of a partnership built on trust. Ryan had trained Ghost from the time he was young. He had noticed small things that others missed. The way Ghost would check on new handlers during training. The way he would stay close whenever someone seemed uncertain. Ryan had written that Ghost had a rare ability. Not just intelligence, not just discipline, the ability to understand emotion. Marcus read one final note from Ryan's personal journal. A great K9 does not follow because he has to. He follows because he believes in you. Marcus closed the folder slowly. Those words stayed with him. He knew that feeling. The feeling of carrying responsibility. For someone else. The feeling of wondering whether you were strong enough to protect the people who trusted you. That afternoon, Marcus took Ghost back to the training field. It was the same place where many Marine and K9 teams had built their connection over the years. The grass moved gently beneath the ocean breeze. The sounds of training echoed in the distance. Ghost walked beside Marcus with quiet confidence. Several Marines watched from nearby, still amazed by the story unfolding in front of them. To them, Ghost had arrived as a mystery. But now they saw something different. They saw a veteran partner who had returned carrying memories no one else could carry. Emily joined Marcus near the field. "There is something I still do not understand," she said. Marcus looked at her. "What is that? How did he know where to come?" Marcus looked at Ghost. The white German shepherd was watching the horizon, his ears moving slightly with every sound. Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe some things are not meant to be explained. That evening, another message arrived from the archives. A small piece of information had been found connected to Ryan's final records. It was not a complete report. It was only a single entry. But it changed everything. The record suggested that Ryan had left behind something important before he disappeared. Something connected to Ghost. Something that explained why the collar had been damaged. Marcus read the entry twice. Then a third time. The truth was getting closer. But so was a question nobody had asked before. If Ghost had returned carrying Ryan's message, what had he been protecting all these years? The morning fog settled over Camp Pendleton like a quiet blanket, softening the edges of the buildings and covering the training fields in a pale silver glow. Marcus Hayes stood inside the archive room again, the old records spread across the table in front of him. The message from Ryan Miller had answered one question, but it had created another. What had Ghost been protecting all these years? The answer was somewhere inside the missing pieces of a story that had never been finished. Dr. Emily Carter placed a new folder beside the others. "We found another reference connected to Ryan's final assignment," she said quietly. Marcus looked at the folder but did not open it immediately. He had learned that some truths carried weight. Some memories needed a moment before they could be touched. Inside were notes from Ryan's final months as a K9 handler. There were training reports, personal observations, and small details that showed the relationship between a Marine and his partner. But one document caught Marcus's attention. It was not an official report. It was a handwritten note attached to an old equipment record. Ryan had written about Ghost's collar. The note explained that the collar had been modified with a small protective compartment. It was designed to carry important information during situations where communication was difficult. Marcus looked at Emily. So the collar was never damaged by accident. Emily nodded slowly. No. Someone wanted what was inside to disappear. The words were simple, but they changed the meaning of everything. The burn marks were not just signs of age. They were evidence that someone had tried to erase a message. Outside the archive room, Ghost waited near Marcus's desk. The white German shepherd had become a familiar presence around the base. Marines who once watched him with curiosity now greeted him with respect. They saw the way he moved, the way he watched people, the way he seemed to carry memories that belonged to another time. Marcus approached him and knelt down. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Ghost looked at him quietly. The dog did not need words. His loyalty had always spoken in other ways. Later that day, Marcus and Emily examined the collar again. Beneath the damaged surface, they discovered a second marking hidden near the inside edge. It was a symbol from a K9 training group that no longer existed. A small circle with a single line through the center. Ryan had used it as a personal reminder between him and Ghost. It meant one thing: stay together. Marcus ran his fingers over the marking carefully. He thought about all the years he had spent believing that losing someone meant accepting an ending. But Ghost had shown him something different. Sometimes a story pauses. Sometimes a promise waits. The afternoon passed slowly at the training field. Marcus worked with Ghost through simple exercises, not as a test, but as a way to rebuild trust. Ghost followed every command with quiet confidence. There was no need for force, no need for pressure. The connection was already there. A young Marine watching nearby smiled. "He acts like he has known you forever, Sergeant." Marcus looked down at Ghost. Maybe he has. That evening, Captain Daniel Whitmore called Marcus into his office. On the desk was another file. This one had been sealed for years. "We found something in the old record system," Captain Whitmore said. A final note connected to Ryan Miller's assignment. Marcus opened the file slowly. The first page contained only a few lines. But those lines carried a hidden truth. Ryan had not disappeared without leaving something behind. He had prepared a message. Not for another Marine. Not for an officer. For Ghost. The note explained that if anything ever happened and Ghost returned alone, whoever found him should understand one thing. The K9 was not lost. He was carrying a responsibility. Marcus read the sentence again. Then he looked at Ghost waiting outside the office door. For years, people had wondered how a dog could survive after losing the person he trusted most. But maybe they had asked the wrong question. The real question was how much love and loyalty one heart could carry before finally finding a place to rest. And now, as the final pieces began to come together, Marcus realized the truth was not only about Ryan. It was about a promise that had traveled farther than anyone expected. A promise that had followed Ghost across miles, across years, and finally back home. The next morning arrived with a strange feeling across Camp Pendleton. Nothing looked different. The same sunlight touched the training fields. The same ocean breeze moved through the palm trees near the base. Marines continued their daily routines, carrying equipment, checking schedules, and preparing for another day of service. But something had changed. Everyone knew there was a story hidden inside the old white German Shepherd. Named Ghost. Sergeant Marcus Hayes stood in Captain Daniel Whitmore's office, holding the file that had been sealed for years. The final note from Ryan Miller remained open on the desk. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise. Ghost was not lost. He was carrying a responsibility. Marcus looked at the old records again, searching for anything that could explain what Ryan wanted the world to know. Inside the file was a reference to a location. Not a dangerous place. Not a battlefield. Just a small training area that had been closed several years earlier. It was where Ryan and Ghost had spent their earliest days together. Captain Whitmore looked thoughtful. "Maybe that is where we need to start," he said. Marcus nodded. He understood something now. They were not searching for information alone. They were following a path left behind by someone who trusted that the right person would eventually find it. When Marcus arrived at the old training area with Ghost beside him, the atmosphere felt different. The abandoned field was quiet. Tall grass moved gently in the wind. The wooden structures showed signs of time, but the place still carried memories. Ghost stopped near the entrance. His ears lifted. His eyes moved across the area as if he recognized every corner. Marcus watched him carefully. "You remember this place," he whispered. The German Shepherd slowly walked forward. He moved with purpose, not confusion. Every step seemed guided by something deeper than instinct. Near an old wooden bench, Ghost stopped. He looked beneath it, then looked back at Marcus. The Marine walked closer and noticed a small metal container hidden beneath the surface. It was not damaged. It was protected from the weather. Inside were several items that belonged to Ryan. An old photograph of Ryan and Ghost during training. A handwritten journal filled with notes about their partnership. And one final message. Marcus opened the journal carefully. The pages described ordinary moments. Morning training sessions. Quiet walks after long days. Small victories that only Ryan and Ghost understood. One entry made Marcus pause. Ryan had written that Ghost was not the strongest K9 he had ever worked with. He was not the fastest. But he had something rare. He cared. He noticed when people were struggling. He stayed close when someone needed comfort. Marcus felt those words deeply. He knew what it meant to appear strong while carrying invisible weight. He knew how easy it was for people to see the uniform, but not the person underneath. Ghost had always seen the person. As the afternoon light faded, Marcus continued reading. The final pages explained why Ryan had hidden the message. He knew there might come a day when Ghost needed a new home. He wanted whoever found him to understand that trust was not something to force. It was something to earn. And the last sentence was written directly for Ghost. "Find someone who needs you as much as you need them." Marcus closed the journal slowly. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind moving through the grass. Ghost sat beside him, resting quietly. Marcus placed his hand on the dog's shoulder. "You were looking for someone too, weren't you?" The German Shepherd leaned closer. It was a small gesture, but Marcus felt the meaning behind it. They had both spent years carrying memories of people they could not bring back. They had both learned how to keep moving while carrying questions without answers. But maybe healing was not about forgetting. Maybe it was about finding someone who understood the weight you carried. As they walked back toward the base, Marcus noticed something unusual. Ghost was no longer looking behind them. For the first time since arriving at Camp Pendleton, the white German shepherd walked forward with confidence. The past was still part of him. The memories were still there. But he had finally found a place where he belonged. And Marcus realized that sometimes the greatest discoveries were not hidden in old files or forgotten records. Sometimes they were standing beside you, quietly waiting to remind you that no one is meant to carry their journey alone. The morning after their discovery at the old training field, Camp Pendleton felt different to Marcus Hayes. The base was still filled with familiar sounds. Boots moving across concrete, vehicles passing through, the gates, voices carrying across the open grounds. But for Marcus, everything seemed quieter. The journal from Ryan Miller sat on his desk, open to the final pages, reminding him that some stories were never truly finished. They simply waited for someone willing to listen. Ghost rested beside the office door, his white coat glowing softly beneath the morning light. The German shepherd had changed since the day he arrived. He still carried the same scars and memories, but there was a calmness in his eyes now, a feeling that he no longer had to search for something he had already found. Marcus looked at the journal one more time before closing it. "We are going to find the rest of your story," he said quietly. Later that morning, Dr. Emily Carter returned with new information from the old records. She had spent hours reviewing archived documents connected to Ryan's final assignment. "There is something unusual," she said. Marcus looked up. "What did you find?" Emily placed several pages on the table. They were not mission reports. They were personal notes written by people who worked with Ryan and Ghost. The notes described a final training period before Ryan disappeared from official records. They mentioned a moment when Ryan realized Ghost had a unique ability. He could sense when people needed help. Not through commands, not through training, through trust. One note described how Ghost once stayed beside a young Marine during a difficult day, refusing to leave until the Marine felt better. Another described how Ryan believed every K9 carried a purpose beyond service. Marcus read the words slowly. They reminded him of something he had forgotten. Being a soldier was not only about completing missions. It was also about protecting the people beside you. That afternoon, Marcus took Ghost to the open field near the K9 facilities. The sun was warm, and the ocean breeze moved gently through the grass. Several Marines watched as Ghost walked beside Marcus. They had seen many trained dogs before, but Ghost was different. There was a quiet wisdom in the way he moved. He did not seek attention. He simply stayed close. A younger Marine approached Marcus. "Sergeant, I heard about the journal." Marcus nodded. "There is still a lot we do not know." The Marine looked at Ghost. "But he knows, doesn't he?" Marcus looked down at the dog. "I think he knows more than any of us." That evening, another message arrived from the archives. This one came from a retired K9 officer who had worked with Ryan years earlier. The officer explained that before Ryan disappeared, he had left instructions about Ghost. Not official instructions, personal ones. He wanted Ghost to be cared for by someone who understood loyalty. Someone who would not see him as equipment, but as a partner. Marcus sat quietly after reading the message. The word stayed with him. Partner. That was the word Ryan used. Not animal. Not tool. Partner. Ghost had spent years carrying the memory of someone who saw him that way. Marcus understood why the dog had returned. It was not only about finding a location. It was about finding someone who would understand the promise Ryan made. As the evening settled over the base, Marcus sat outside with Ghost near the K9 kennels. The sky turned shades of orange and gold. For a while, neither of them moved. They simply listened to the quiet. "You know," Marcus said softly, "I used to think losing someone meant the story was over." Ghost turned his head toward him. "Maybe I was wrong." The dog placed his paw gently beside Marcus's boot. It was a simple gesture, but sometimes simple gestures carried the deepest meaning. The next day, Marcus received a call from Captain Whitmore. More information had been uncovered from Ryan's final records. A hidden detail that had been overlooked for years. Something connected to the damaged collar. Something that could finally explain why Ghost returned when he did. Marcus looked toward the training field where Ghost was waiting. The white German shepherd stood beneath the morning sun, calm and patient. After all this time, the final piece of the story was finally within reach. But Marcus did not know yet that discovering the truth would also reveal the greatest sacrifice Ryan had ever made for his partner. The morning sun rose slowly over Camp Pendleton, painting the training fields with soft golden light. For most Marines, it was another day of duty. Another day of schedules, preparation, and responsibility. But for Sergeant Marcus Hayes, the day carried a different weight. The call from Captain Daniel Whitmore had changed everything. After years of unanswered questions, they had finally discovered a missing piece connected to Ryan Miller's final records. Marcus walked into the command office with Ghost beside him. The white German shepherd moved quietly, his steps steady against the polished floor. He had become more than a K9 on the base. To many Marines, he had become a reminder that loyalty could survive even the longest silence. Captain Whitmore placed a new file on the desk. "This came from an archived storage system," he said. "It was never properly connected to Ryan's case." Marcus opened the folder carefully. Inside was a document from the old K9 division. It contained information about a final training exercise Ryan and Ghost completed before Ryan disappeared from active records. But what caught Marcus's attention was not the exercise itself. It was a note written by Ryan. The handwriting was familiar now, the same careful letters that had carried messages across years. Ghost was trained to return home, not because he was ordered to, because he believed home was where his partner was. Marcus paused. Those words felt heavier than any official report. They explained something everyone had struggled to understand. Ghost had not wandered back to Camp Pendleton by chance. He had followed a promise. Emily Carter entered the office carrying another set of documents. Her expression was thoughtful. "There is more," she said. She explained that the hidden compartment inside Ghost's collar was designed for emergency information, but Ryan had added something personal. A final reminder about their bond. Inside the records was a description of a small tradition between Ryan and Ghost. After every training session, Ryan would sit with Ghost for a few minutes before returning to duty. He believed those quiet moments mattered. He believed AK-9 needed more than commands. It needed connection. Marcus looked through the window at Ghost waiting outside. The dog was sitting beneath a tree, watching the movement of the base. Calm, patient, faithful. He was never just following instructions, Marcus said. Emily nodded. No, he was following love. Later that afternoon, Marcus brought Ghost to the memorial garden near the edge of the base. It was a peaceful place where Marines came to reflect and remember those who had shaped their lives. The flowers moved gently in the breeze. The sound of the ocean filled the distance. Marcus sat on the bench while Ghost rested beside him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Marcus thought about his own journey. The years spent carrying regret. The nights wondering if he had done enough. He had always believed that strength meant carrying everything alone. But Ghost had shown him something different. Real strength was also knowing when to trust again. As the evening approached, Captain Whitmore arrived with one final piece of information. The records team had discovered a location connected to Ryan's last personal note. It was not a place of conflict. It was a quiet storage facility near the old training grounds where Ryan had kept personal items from his K9 partnership. Marcus and Ghost followed Captain Whitmore there the next morning. The small building had been untouched for years. Inside were boxes filled with memories, training photographs, old equipment, notes from a Marine who believed every relationship mattered. Then Marcus found something that made him stop. A small envelope with Ghost's name written across the front. He held it carefully. The room became quiet. Even Ghost seemed to understand that something important was about to happen. Marcus opened the envelope and found a letter written by Ryan. It was not long. It did not contain complicated explanations. It was simply a message from one partner to another. Ryan wrote that he hoped Ghost would find someone kind, someone patient, someone who would understand that a loyal heart does not stop loving just because time passes. Marcus looked at Ghost as he finished reading. The dog stepped closer and rested his head against Marcus's hand. In that moment, Marcus understood the truth Ryan had carried all along. Ghost was never searching for the past. He was carrying it forward. And now, after years of waiting, the promise between a Marine and his K9 had finally found a new home. The morning air at Camp Pendleton carried a peaceful feeling that Marcus Hayes had not felt in a very long time. The same ocean breeze moved across the base. The same sunlight touched the training fields. But something inside him had changed. The letter from Ryan Miller was no longer just a piece of the past. It was a reminder that some promises survive because someone chooses to carry them forward. Marcus stood outside the K9 facility with Ghost beside him. The white German shepherd looked stronger now. His coat had regained its natural brightness. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now carried a quiet confidence. He was still the same K9 who had walked through the gates carrying a damaged collar and an unfinished story. But he was no longer a forgotten memory. He was home. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued building a connection with Ghost. It was not about replacing Ryan. Neither of them could ever replace what was lost. It was about understanding that love could grow without forgetting where it came from. Every morning, Marcus walked with Ghost across the training fields. They moved slowly, without pressure. Sometimes they practiced simple commands. Sometimes they just sat beneath the California sky and listened to the world around them. Those quiet moments became important. Marcus realized that healing was not always a dramatic event. Sometimes it was a small routine, a familiar walk, a loyal companion waiting beside you. One afternoon, the Marine Corps community gathered at the K9 facility for a special ceremony. It was not a celebration of the past. It was a recognition of loyalty. Captain Daniel Whitmore stood in front of the Marines and spoke about Ryan Miller and Ghost. He talked about service, commitment, and the bond between a handler and a K9 partner. When Ghost walked forward beside Marcus, the entire area became silent. Not because people were sad, because they understood what they were seeing. A dog who had carried years of memories. A Marine who had carried years of questions. 2. Souls who had found peace together. Dr. Emily Carter watched from the crowd with a smile. She remembered the first day Ghost arrived. Back then, he was a mystery. A dog with a damaged collar and no clear explanation. Now he was a symbol of something much bigger. He reminded everyone that loyalty did not disappear when someone was gone. It remained in the choices people made. It remained in the kindness they showed. It remained in the promises they kept. After the ceremony, Marcus walked with Ghost toward the quiet edge of the base. The afternoon sun reflected across the ocean, turning the water into a field of gold. Marcus held the old collar in his hand. The burn marks were still there. The past could not be erased. But now the damage no longer represented loss. It represented survival. Marcus looked at Ghost and smiled. You carried his memory a long way. Ghost looked up at him, calm and steady. Marcus placed the collar carefully into a small display case that would remain in the K9 history room. Not as a reminder of something broken, but as proof that some bonds are stronger than time. Years earlier, Marcus believed that losing someone meant a part of life was permanently missing. Ghost taught him another lesson. Sometimes the people and animals we lose leave behind something that continues to guide us. A lesson, a memory, a reason to keep moving forward. As evening arrived, the lights around Camp Pendleton began glowing one by one. Marcus sat outside the K9 facility while Ghost rested beside him. The base was quiet. The world felt still. For the first time in years, Marcus did not feel like he was carrying everything alone. Beside him was a partner who understood silence. A friend who never needed explanations. A reminder that even the smallest act of compassion can change two lives forever. Ghost had returned looking for a place to belong. Marcus had been searching for a reason to believe again. In the end, they found the same thing. Not an answer to every question. Not a way to change the past. But a peaceful place to continue the journey ahead. And sometimes, that is the greatest miracle of all.